Hey y'all, I'm Josie.
And I'm Vickie. Today we're going to take POC representation in media little by slowly.
Woo. um, so fun fact, me and Vickie sometimes will just like go on like idea splurges where we just like list off a bunch of ideas, and for whatever reason, I feel like this week kind of like falls in line a lot with like what's like happening that we're seeing in media, especially with like films like In the Heights coming out, and like just seeing that conversation around POC, and the representation that they get within media, and whether or not it's like, I feel like I hear a lot about like whether or not it's enough that that we're getting, and like even what if it's, what is the word I'm looking for, like if it's not like comprehensive enough, but like
If it like feels like the depth and
I guess
breadth
like
of
intersectional enough.
yeah, that's good.
What were
Yeah.
you saying?
No, I was just gonna say that like, if it feel it's you intersectional is perfect because I was just gonna basically say the definition of intersectional. I was just gonna say if it filled the depth and breadth of what it means to be of that culture.
I guess to speak a little bit more on like what you were saying, how kind of feels like when POC creators they come out with like shows and like TV and media. Sometimes it's kind of like, I think there needs to be a balance between like finding and like enjoying the piece that's being made, but also being able to like critique it and being like, okay, could have been better in this way.
Mhm.
And I was telling Victoria that I learned this term this past quarter called burden of representation, and it kind of just like wraps that up on how specifically POC creators are always faced with the burden of having to represent their community as a whole, but how hard that task is. And I think a part of the reason why that task is so hard is because there's so little media of of displaying POC in general. And it's kind of like weird because like when you see media that represents, it's almost like when POC like make characters or like TV shows, like I think the expectation is that this is representative of who that culture is, and anything that comes out in it is what viewers are going to see it as. So like, and I don't really see the same thing happening with like media that has like like a white lens, really. Like if a white person comes out like as like a villain or something like that, like no one's gonna be walking down the street being like, oh yeah, that white person's a villain, like they're evil. But like in media, if you see a person of color who is bad and is doing bad things, people are going to assume that people of color are bad and are doing bad things. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's hard
It definitely
to.
it is hard. And I was gonna ask a question because I was while you were speaking in my head, I was trying to think of all the media that I consume that it's funny because a lot of the media I do consume is um created by people of color, and I think more specifically women of color. Like I'm thinking of like how excited I was about Mindy Kaling's show. Like I think it was like called Mindy or something like that. But like I don't know, or even the show Special. Like I don't think that's actually created by a person of color, but the actress, I can't remember her name. The actress that is the main character's like best friend is of Indian descent, and like she gets the opportunity to like show off her culture, and they like have a whole Diwali episode, and they do the same thing in Mindy's show. I think it's just called Mindy. And even in initial episodes or initial seasons actually of Master of None, and C Sansari is able to show like a little bit of his culture and like show off his parents, and even talk even had an episode about some stereotypes because his character wants to be an actor, and talked about a lot of the interviews that he went on, not interviews, like castings that he went on. They often asked him to do like an Indian accent, and that like offended him. um And for some reason, I think I bring this up because I can't think of any Indian or Indian American creators on Instagram or Twitter or anything complaining about that kind of representation. Like it almost feels like they like it. Like every time that there's some sort of Indian American or Indian representation in media, they seem like they're like, this is awesome. Like I really love seeing it. Even in Never Have I Ever, like they loved that representation that Mindy Kaling gave of the Indian immigrant parents, and then the Indian American daughter, and then the Indian international student cousin. So I think wrapping this all around it, I just want to say, I think my question, because I started this wanting to ask a question, is do you think that the Latinx community just complains a lot? Or if you do, or do you think that the creators who are making these shows supposedly to represent Latinx communities aren't doing a good as job as Indian American or Indian creators?
I think it goes a lot more deeper than just like the creators, because don't forget, we also have like producers, we have like production companies and stuff like that who are also going to want to put in their input. And while the creator themselves might be a person of color, the other people in those backgrounds might not be. And I think that's where you get like a lot of like, okay, you want this to air, but here's what we're going to have. And I think that's why sometimes it's so hard to like represent communities in the way that you necessarily want to. And I don't think it's that the Latinx community like complains a lot. I think what we've seen in the shows that you described, like I think that's a good example of being able to show like it's like positive representation, but it's also showing like hardships and even like those like the differences that are between different generations in those families, and it feels real, it feels authentic, right? And I think that's why like those shows just like feel good, and it feels like a good way of representation. And I actually saw someone the other day on like TikTok that was talking about like In the Heights, and they were like, okay, yeah, like there was a lack of like Afro Latinos in the film, but like let's also like acknowledge the way that like no one had a teen pregnancy in the movie, no one was out here dealing drugs, no one was out here like in gangs or like harming each other and stuff like that. And like that's something that I hadn't like thought about within the film, where it was just kind of like they were just existing and they were just like allowed to exist in the film, you know. And like the worst thing that happened, and well, I'm not gonna say that. I was gonna say what's the worst thing in the film that happened, but like spoilers. And so yeah, and I think when that person was talking about it, I think they were even talking about how someone wanted one of the characters to like be pregnant or something like that, but then the creator was like, we don't need that. We don't need that kind of like representation. I think it's just kind of like, I think at the end of the day, it's like a real battle between like what the creator wants and like being able to like have the piece be aired.
I'm just still thinking about other people of color besides like those in the Latinx community and their representation, and the way that I'm not of that community, so I can't blanketly say it feels really accurate, but I haven't seen anyone wholeheartedly complain about anything besides Crazy Rich Asians. I don't think what I saw was some little backlash about that one, but like, have you really love Kim's Convenience? Has there been any like backlash about that show besides it being canceled?
I honestly have not really looked at many backlash on it, but I also don't know I didn't know many people watched it until it got canceled, and I was like, here's my people. But it's weird. It's weird because when I watch Kim's Convenience, I really resonate with it, which is weird because I am not Canadian. My family is not Asian. They do not own a convenience store, so I don't understand like I find that interesting because I feel very at home when I watch it, and I don't know what it is about the show. I think it might just be like the general relationship between like being a child who is born in like a Western society versus like having like that immigrant parent, and like that disconnect between like ideas is what I sometimes see in that show. And I know that's not like what you were asking, but I think about this a lot because I do, like when I watch Kim's, I feel like I resonate with it, and it feels like home when I watch it. But it's weird because it's like it shouldn't, and it's weird that I feel that way about that piece, and that I don't feel that way about other like Latinx media, and like those options that are available. Yeah,
Yeah. I
I don't know if you have anything like that.
No, but I was just gonna say that it might just be the way that they depict like that immigrant experience, because oftentimes what I've seen in Latinx media when they're depicting the immigrant experience of those in the Latinx community, there always has to be some sort of like conflict with getting like your green card, a conflict with immigration, and there always has to be some sort of like layered trauma in there, which I don't know if they go over that in Kim's Convenience. Do they ever like touch on stuff like that? Yeah. And I know both my grandparents are immigrants, and my mom is not an immigrant. But like I never remember from my childhood any sort of like conflict with that. And I understand that it is a large part of the Latinx community, and a lot of individuals do deal with that, but there are different levels of those situations where sometimes it doesn't have to be that way. Like, yeah. Like my grandparents didn't, I don't
Yeah.
want to say obviously, but they didn't immigrate here legally. So they didn't have their green card and they didn't have any of that information. So like they were here just kind of like illegally, but we didn't have any of those kind of situations that you'd see in mainstream media about Mexicans immigrating to the United States.
Yeah, I think you worded it perfectly because I feel the same way with like my family. And I think again earlier, like I forgot what media I was saying this about, but like with Kim's, they're mainly just existing.
Yeah.
And they happen to be an Asian family who have other Asian friends. And like, I don't know, I just like, yes, sometimes we do need to see like the issues that happen within like the community and stuff like that. But sometimes it's nice to just be able to watch something and just see people exist. Um,
You know what that reminds me of that I really want to talk about, because I know that we both watched it and we both loved it. I keep wanting to call it I was gonna call it awkward, but it's not awkward because she would call herself an awkward Black girl. It's Insecure.
oh,
Yeah, by
Insecure,
Issa Rae. Yeah,
yes,
and how Issa Rae is so huge on just
yes.
showing stories of Black people just existing, which blows my mind that
Mm-hmm.
they can't just do that. It always has to be some sort of trauma porn situation where Black people are going through all these hardships and are struggling and doing all this stuff, which is really important because Black people are struggling, Black people are going through these traumas. There's also Black people who are literally just existing. And I talked about this with my aunt this weekend, my aunt, my dad, my sister, and my mom, where they were talking about this individual that worked with my aunt who wanted to adopt like a Black child, and how the adoption agency said no. And the white woman who wanted to adopt the child was just like, oh, I could have properly taught this Black child about what it means to be Black. And my aunt was like, no, you couldn't have, because all you're going to do is teach
Mm-hmm.
them about the trauma and the hardships that they've gone through in the US and the history of being Black, but you're not going to teach them about all the fun, amazing parts about what it means to be Black. And you won't know those parts because you aren't Black. Black culture is so rich and vibrant and beautiful, and you're not going to be able to show that child that because you're not Black and you don't understand it. And I was like, that is a perfect way of saying it, because there's so many white people who are like, I studied African American literature and culture in college, so I understand the Black plight. And it's like, you understand all of the negative stuff that they love to teach in courses, but you don't understand the beautiful parts of being Black. And I think that's what needs to be shown in media more. Yeah.
It reminds me of I don't know if you ever watched Queen and Slim. I watched it and I regretted watching it because I was like,
I didn't want to watch it. I was like, this is just fucking trauma porn.
I didn't know what I was going into. I have the habit of friends inviting me to go watch something. And I'm like, okay, I've never seen the trailer. I'm like, let me watch it. We walk out, find out like the creators were white. And it's like, okay, first of all, we should have known better than like showing up in here. But like that, I think those two shows very different. I mean, the movie and and versus like Insecure, like very different like experiences where like one of them is just trying to show like the trauma, and like you have like white creators just being like, oh yeah, this is what it is to be Black and to be part of that community. It's like and then you have like Issa Rae, who's just like trying to show the community exists.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you did you watch that there was like a small like interview clip, I think, where Issa Rae was just kind of talking about like how she didn't want to like how there's so many how she didn't want to make what's it called, a show necessarily just about like a strong Black woman, but she wanted to show like the vulnerable and like those like insecure and like awkward moments of because I think her point and her thing was that like there's in media you also always see like just like depictions of like Black women just wanting to be like really strong and they like really got it and like how that's cool and all, but it's also like you can show them being like human and then like a person too. Like
100%. Yeah.
Excited for the new season to come out. They finished they finished wrapping it up, so
they did. Yeah. I also like, I think I saw this on TikTok where they were talking about how when you think of an interracial couple, you often only think about like a white person and a Black person getting together, but there's so many other interracial couples of interracial people of color who ends up getting into a relationship, and it could be really beautiful to show the dynamic of that. And I was like, yeah, I'm Mexican and Black, two people of color coming together. That could be a really beautiful story that could show like the intertwinedness of it. Like my grandpa trying to jokingly trick my dad into getting like what is those, like the cowboy boots and the hat, and how my grandma would always make him really hot like salsa and would like be like, oh, it's not hot, and would give it to my dad and he would like be sweating, and just like that dynamic of like, I don't know, of just the differences between the cultures and stuff like that. And I've had so many fun and beautiful memories of like the blending of the cultures that I would love to see something like that on screen. I don't know.
Have you seen Our Family Wedding?
No.
Have you seen that?
Oh, hold on. Let me look it up.
I
think I have.
Because it is a movie. I was about to say a film about a Mexican and a Black family coming together does exist, but it's not the way you described it, because the way you described it is very beautiful. But the way this film does it, it's very much like here are all the stereotypes of each culture collide.
Yeah, I have 100% seen that one.
And it's a lot of like so I really like, because at first when you described it, I'm like, that movie exists, but it's trash. But I like the way you described it, where it like, yeah, it is a very beautiful thing, and it should be shown as a very beautiful thing, and not, it doesn't have to be like a whole like a fight over who's the best race, because that's what it felt like in that film. It just felt like it was like a constant fight between like who's better, like it rubbed off the wrong way. And I don't know. I think right now that you were saying that, I think about like how disappointing it is to like think to like hear about a film or like a TV show that's coming out, and like on the very like basis, it's like, okay, that kind of sounds like me. Like, let's click on it and see what happens. And then when you see it, you're like,
Yeah.
this is bad.
Mhm.
That's disappointing, and like it like sucks because it's like media like that can be created so much more positively and like wholesomely. And I think like the thing we keep coming back around to is how POC in general just deserve to be, just to have like wholesome content. Are you
Yeah.
googling something?
Yes, I was Googling that movie that Issa Rae is in that I've never seen, called Lovebirds.
Yeah,
Yeah, and how
yeah,
it's like a Black person, and I believe that I actually don't know. I don't want to guess. Oh, he's from Pakistan.
yeah. And I think in that film, like the center of it is not their race. It's not them being like necessarily like an interracial couple. They're just again existing. And I think when people talk about like stuff like that, they're like, yeah, they could have really put anyone in those films and it still would have like worked. And sometimes it's nice to just like watch stuff like that, because not everything needs to have like a bigger, deeper meaning. Like we don't need to have like these like constant conflicts happening, or like these like dramatic, because like, yeah, okay, yeah, they happen, but like that's not all that is there, that's not all that exists. um
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I think that is a really perfect description of it, because that, like you said, that movie with America Ferrera, where it's like the Mexican and the Black people, there's like this big conflict of like her getting with the Black guy. It's like there was never a big conflict. There was never anything that was a big deal. Like everyone's just chilling. There's so much opportunity in media for them to just show an interracial couple of two people of color just like existing with no pre-existing conflict. That is that I'm putting it out in the universe. I want to see that.
yeah, yeah. And I think like even to be able to just like have that media for like families that do have like those like conflicts happening in like their families, or have like those like, I just think about like them being able to watch stuff like that where they're just kind of existing and to kind of like, okay, it doesn't have to be a big deal. The more you see it, does not have to be a big deal. Like
Yeah.
it's show. um
But something else that I wanted to talk about and bring up that I thought was interesting that I sent to you over this weekend, and I think you saw before I sent it to you, was the that clip. I can't remember her name. Yes, yes, yes.
mhm.
Rita Moreno. Rita Moreno did an interview with some white man interviewer. But she did an interview where she was basically saying that this representation was that the up she would have liked the opportunity to have been the person to open up Puerto Rican culture, Latinx culture into mainstream media, but she herself wasn't able to do that. And the person who is being able to do that is Lin-Manuel Miranda, and that she thinks that he's doing a wonderful job, and that this is the representation that she's been asking for years. But when it comes to Afro Latinx communities asking to be like more represented, to have more representation in media, they need to wait their turn, because like this other group of Latinx individuals who are of lighter complexion are getting their turn now, and they've been waiting for years. So they need to just wait until they get accepted more into mainstream media, and then they can come. And people were just like, that's bullshit.
that that whole like idea and thought process just feels very like, okay, let's it kind of just feels like she's saying like, yeah, we need to take baby steps before we can get like the main like on board with it, or like it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, yeah, we're gonna show white Latinx folks first, and then we'll start like introducing more. And it's like, you don't have to do that. Yeah, so like that logic doesn't make any sense to me, because I feel like that logic she's trying to get at is like, okay, we need to show white Latinx folks first in order to like adjust and acclimate like the mainstream,
Yes.
and then we start like gradually going up, and it's like, first of all, why would you do anything for the convenience of others?
Mhm.
And like, what? It just doesn't make any like
Any sense.
sense, because
Yeah.
yeah, because then like it becomes like a thing of like, oh well, not now, maybe in like 10 years, like, and it's like, no, people shouldn't have to wait. People deserve to be seen. And like, I don't understand like why someone like her can't like understand the idea like, hey, didn't it feel good to see yourself there? So wouldn't it feel good for others? Don't you think other people are as deserving to see themselves? And it's like, I just don't understand what's
Yeah.
where the disconnect is.
But to further emphasize your point, Washington Heights is predominantly Afro Latinx community. So even at the baseline of what Lin-Manuel was trying to do, he just wasn't being accurate to the community. Like it was like you're not even being accurate to the individuals who are in that community currently. So you're making this show or this movie about Washington Heights, and you're not showing anyone who could possibly live in Washington Heights.
Yeah, and I just think about like that's very true. It like, not only is it like an accurate representation, but also he is rewriting the narrative of what Washington Heights is.
Yes.
And so now when people like watch it, they're gonna think, oh, this is what Washington Heights looks like, and it's not. He is literally distorting reality.
Yes. Because I had no idea. Like, I am not familiar with boroughs in New York. I am not familiar with the individuals who currently reside in New York because I have actually never been to New York and haven't, like, there's lots of movies about New York, but it's mostly from the white lens and it's mostly just showing, like, just like, what is it, Manhattan? Because, like, Sex in the City. So I don't know anything about Washington Heights. So if I were to just watch In the Heights by itself, I'd be like, oh, there's just like a bunch of white looking Latinx individuals. I'd recognize the actresses, like homegirl from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, homegirl from Vida. Like, I'm just recognizing faces. If I hadn't have gone on Twitter, I wouldn't have seen all the individuals just upset that you're not even showing who even just lives there at the baseline.
I think with that like particular situation, like, he definitely did have a responsibility to like depict the community accurately, especially if he's making a film based on the whole the whole center of the film is the community. So why not
Yeah.
depict it as it should? Yeah. And I think in like other films that do show Latinx communities or any other um communities of color, there we still see like a lack of, at the end of the day, an intersectionality within those films, because like I feel like often like in films that like center people of color, like there's also like very little like representation on like people of different like complexions, or even like different sexual identities and stuff like that, within those, and it's like,
Yeah. I was gonna say, have you ever seen Vida?
no, I've never seen Vida.
Vida has, I think it's a pretty cool representation of people of different gender identities and the way they existed in that. And then also like a little bit, not a little bit, it's one of the main points. It speaks on like gentrification, and it also speaks on like the way sexuality is viewed by like some older individuals in our community, and like the hypocrisy that's often there. So I enjoyed Vida, but then also I don't believe that there was any individuals from a Latinx community of darker complexion in that either. It's just a bunch of lighter complexioned Latinx individuals. But it's like, it's almost like they can only do one part of being intersectional. It's like, we already are talking about the gays,
Yeah.
like we can't like do that. So Like, we can't do that too. That's too much.
That has me dead. Yeah, it almost does feel that way, where they're like, this might be a little too much, like, gotta
Right?
chill out
A little too
here. But
radical. We can't do that. We can't show any brown gay people just yet from the Latinx community.
yeah, I don't know if you watch many like Mexican made like movies or like shows or anything like that. Sometimes I will, like, on Netflix. And like the same thing there too, where like everyone is very light all the time, and it's like, but I also can't speak a lot on like what Mexican production is doing, just an observation I've made. But
Yeah.
I'm guessing Mexican production and American production are kind of riding the same wave.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Because there's hella colorism in Mexico. It makes complete sense that they wouldn't want to show that, which is interesting.
Mhm.
Even that show, what is that show? There was a show that was on Netflix that was about, it was like a reality show showing rich Mexicans in, I believe, like Mexico City or something like that, and it was just following around like these rich kids, like living their lives and stuff like that, and they all looked like really white passing.
I remember hearing about that show. I remember seeing like memes and stuff like making fun of it because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I feel like I really enjoy like watching like Spanish content, but then sometimes it's also like it gets annoying because like it's the language I like watching stuff in, but it's like why do I have to watch this? Like,
Yeah.
and so here we are. I think when it comes to media, it sometimes I really want to watch something, I really want people to enjoy it, but then the whole time I'm like, I'm annoyed. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to watch something and not feel annoyed and just be able to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and like, I think at the end of the day, like, it's okay to critique things for not being as full as they can be. Because yeah, that's messed up. But I would like to like one day again just be able to enjoy something.
Yeah.
Yeah. When will that be? I don't know. But I think as long as we continue to see like more content like what Issa Rae is coming out with, or like those like other shows that you mentioned earlier, where like people are just like existing and like they're showing different parts of their identity and like in a very wholesome and like happy way. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is the closest I'm getting to that. But would love to see more of that in general.
I really enjoyed this conversation because like it's nice hearing that the things that I've been noticing that like someone else has been noticing too, and that we're both like kind of like itching for the same things. It's not like something that like I feel is like empty and like needing it. It's like you're seeing it too. It feels really good to have like that conversation and to be able to kind of like let out our frustrations, because it could, like, I understand that it's like just media and that it's like, if it's like quote unquote just media, and that it's like not supposed to be taken that seriously, I suppose, but I feel like it is serious. It's like what you're being seen of your culture, and it's frustrating when you don't see it properly depicted. You're seeing it in a way that feels stereotypical and just not your reality.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's never going to be just media.
Mm-hmm.
It's because one, it's a way of like space making and homemaking for those in the community, and for people who don't belong in the community and they're watching that. I would hate for somebody to watch a misrepresentation of me, because it's like they're going to continue going on with their lives thinking that that's what my community is, and it's like that's not. So it's not just me now.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening for a 13th week in a row. We really appreciate it, and thank you. All right. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.